In this video, I'm going to attempt to make up a door card for a Mercedes 107 SL. Now, when we took this door card off our parts car, it was in terrible condition, and we've already done a video on how to make up the hardboard backing and how to disassemble the door card. I would say that unless you're very competent and patient, I wouldn't necessarily recommend trying to make up your own door card. If you do, everything has to be millimeter perfect. All of these holes have to be exactly right, otherwise the clips are not going to line up. And I suspect that it's going to be tricky enough putting this on there without worrying about whether the underlying door card fits. So when you disassemble your door card, there's a few things you're going to have to keep off the old door card. The old foam, useful to keep that unless you've got a source of foam somewhere. The plastic trim pieces that fit around the handles like that. Often you'll find they just disintegrate when you take the door to pieces, and at the end of the video I will show you where you can get some of these parts from. You're going to need to take this piece out carefully, which clips in there, and you're going to need to this piece here and the associated clips. Now these clips here are quite difficult to come by. In fact, I don't even know where you would get clips like that from, so try not to lose them or break them. If any of this is cracked, you can super glue it together before you start. Some of the tools and equipment we're going to need, any cleaning of this vinyl, we're going to use these little bristle brushes. I got a little set from Amazon, they're only a few pounds, and we'll use that to clean off any old glue, any paint. This car's obviously been previously painted, and these bristle brushes will be able to do that without damaging the vinyl. The door card itself, the vinyl is attached to the hardboard with, I believe, both glue and predominantly staples all the way around the edge. So you're going to need to get yourself a proper staple gun like this and a set of low profile staples. And we used this when we were doing the seats on the other car, so we've actually got these staples already. And you're going to need some trim fix adhesive. You'll need a series of these door clips. I wouldn't bother trying to reuse the old ones, just to buy a new set. We'll show you where we got these from, and also a couple of these metal spring clips as well. You can get those from Mercedes. Now this is a door card we bought from the SL shop, cost about £50, and underneath is the door card that we made up ourselves in the previous video. Now it's not 100% perfect, but I'll tell you what, it is pretty darn close. So it just goes to show that if you are careful, you can make up an exact copy of one of these door cards and save yourself a little bit of money. First thing we're going to do is glue on this piece of foam here. Now, depending on your car, some cars have a short pocket and some have a longer pocket, and depending on what sort of car you've got will determine how many little holes you've got here, and those holes should line up to holes you've either pre-cut in there yourself or that come with the supplied door cards. So this is the foam that came off the gold parts car, and we're going to glue that on with some trim fix, and we're going to make sure that we line up those holes just using some little wooden pegs along the way. A little bit of masking tape just so we don't get glue everywhere, and we're going to spray a line of glue along here first and then on the other side of here, and then put the two together. Just take the masking tape off before we start sticking the foam on. It's important when you stick that foam on that you don't stretch the foam as you're doing it, so it ends up being too long, and it's also important that you line up the holes. Very easy to stretch that when you're doing that. Once you've lined everything up, just press it down gently, and that should be fine. You can see that all those holes are lined up, and we haven't gone over the edge at all. Next up, I'm going to put this piece of plastic trim on. It should have 3 hooks here and 1 hook here, and you'll need 2 clips. Now these little clips here you can just get from Screwfix, somewhere like that. They're just used for screwing metal screws onto plastic. These clips here, you'll have to take that off first, and then that clips in through that hole there from behind and holds that piece in place. It can be super difficult to get these clips off. You can see that those sharp bits of metal there dig into the plastic. It's very difficult to get it off, very easy to break the plastic. This bit of plastic has been broken already, but that can just be super glued and that'll be absolutely fine. This piece of trim just fits into those 3 holes and clips through like that, and then you'll have to spin this over like so. And that clip that you've just taken off, which you've hopefully still got, will slide into there and clip that in and hold it tight. I'm just putting a drop of oil on there before I try and slide that over. You should just be able to push that down. Again, do it carefully without breaking the clip or the plastic if you possibly can. And there, that's that piece of trim securely on. Once you've fitted on the plastic trim, there's a little bracing piece of metal that goes across here, which is both glued in and clipped in, which we're going to put in next. You will notice that it'd be wonderful if it was a simple matter of placing this on, folding this over and everything fitted nicely, but it doesn't, because for years this vinyl will have been on a knackered and warped piece of hardboard, so it's shrunk. So it may be the case that we're going to need to get a hairdryer on there just to warm it up to see if we can stretch it out. The other thing you'll need to do is very carefully go along to each one of these teeth and make sure that they're pointing up directly so that they fit inside these holes and that fits over there nice and easily, because that is going to effectively be our starting point, because that section there is fixed. We can't stretch or do anything with that. The rest of it we can kind of try and work around and move things around a little bit. There's a good chance that when you're doing this you'll end up breaking a few of these teeth off, and that's not a tragedy. The next bit we're going to put on is this little piece of metal here. Now we've stripped all the rust off in a rust bath and we've painted it with the MRO chrome galvanized coating, and this bit here is going to be both glued and clipped into this here. Make sure you get the side right. It's the side with the foam and the plastic on, so we'll do that bit next. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, it makes sense to put this bit on before you put the plastic and the foam on, so that you can lay this down flat on a flat surface and then set about bending these prongs back and also pressing that and gluing it in. Just going to make a little paper template there so we don't get glue everywhere. Then we'll take that piece out, spray glue through there like so, and then glue on the back of there, and then we'll try and bend these little tabs down as well. Sprayed down as well. Now we just need to press the two things together. Now this may not be the best glue to use for that, but the advantage is it's quick and it's easy, and I don't think there'll be a problem, because when that's set a little bit, we will just go in and bend those pins around as well. So the glue is just really as a sort of belt and braces. We've got all the easy bits out of the way. Now we're going to start getting on to the tricky bit. We need to attach this hardboard backing to this metal strip up here. And in order to do that, we need to align each one of these holes. Now my advice is to make sure that the little clips that you've bent back on these holes here are bent back far enough so that this fits over really easy without you having to wiggle it, etc. Because we're going to use a adhesive along here to glue and bond this wood on. And what you don't want to be doing is moving it around once you've put the adhesive on there. First, we're going to mark a line along here. This is where we're going to put the glue along here. So we'll just mark that with a felt tip pen. Now we are going to be using Gorilla Glue to glue this. And there may be people out there, professionals, who do this every day thinking, no, you shouldn't do this, you've got to use this, you've got to do that. But I'm not sure what glue to use. All I do know is I've had excellent results with Gorilla Glue in the past. Now this glue here, you've got to be very careful when you apply it. First of all, make sure you wear gloves and don't get it on your clothes. But this glue expands 3 to 4 times. Basically, they often use this to make window frames and wooden joints, etc. And the glue expands into the holes. But we only want to put a very small, thin layer along here. Before we do so, this glue cures from moisture. So we want to run a damp sponge along there just to make that slightly moist. And then finally, we're going to clamp the two pieces together for a couple of hours. And that should be a job done. Also going to put a piece of tape along here, so any overexpansion of glue or any mess that we make, we can just take that tape off. That'll avoid us getting glue everywhere. So we're going to start by putting a thin bead of this Gorilla Glue all the way along here. As I say, this glue expands, so you do not want to use too much of it, otherwise you'll get it everywhere. Next up, we're going to just use a piece of plastic like a credit card or something like that, just to spread this glue on all of the surface to the best of our ability. Make sure we get glue right at the ends as well. Put paper down underneath to stop us getting glue everywhere. One of the reasons I'm not going to use contact adhesive here is because there is some faffing around when you lay the hardboard over here, basically getting it to lay over properly. This glue just gives us a little bit of wiggle room. Avoid getting it anywhere where you don't want it, because it's extremely difficult to get off. Next up, I'm just going to moisten this hardboard or backing board here slightly. You don't need to wet it or anything like that, it's just a slight bit of moisture. And then all we have to do now is press these two together and then clamp them. Now we've got to try and manoeuvre this corner in here. Actually went in relatively easily, some might say too easily. I'm just going to take out this masking tape now while I still can. So we have clamped this as best we can. We've made sure we haven't got any of these edges here tucked underneath the wood. Taken out that top bit of masking tape. We've left this in because I think pretty confident we'll be able to get that out afterwards, and if not, it doesn't matter because you'll never see it. This has been gluing now for about 4 hours, and I'm going to take these clamps off and leave this overnight before we do anything else, because I don't want to leave indentations in the other side of the vinyl and foam. So what I want to avoid is leaving permanent marks like this in the vinyl. I'm sure those will come out overnight, but if you left those clamps on there for any length of time, you might find that you permanently mark the vinyl, and that would be a tragedy. But so far this is looking good. The next thing we're going to do is glue this piece in place. Now this piece is glued around here. It also clips in. You can see there are clips all the way around it, so it's clipped in, glued in, and then this here goes over the top of it. Okay, now you have to remember how this goes. Clips in first, there's always one piece of trim that goes over like this, and this trim here will be stapled and glued on top of it. Once again, we're going to be using the trim fix, and we've got to be careful that we don't get glue everywhere. We just want glue around the edge here and on these edges here. While we're using the trim fix, we can also use the trim fix to glue down this here and this end bit of trim here is here. So we're going to use a combination of masking tape and templates just to ensure that we don't get glue everywhere. I'm just cutting out a template here so that when I spray the glue, it'll go exactly where I want it to go and not all over the rest of the piece. It doesn't matter so much because this is not something you'll ever see, but once again, if you get into the habit of doing things neatly in the bits you don't see, there's more chance that you'll do things properly in the bits that you can see. Okay, these bits here are where the natural clips of the actual piece go. So these are the strongest bits, and this is where we want the glue to go. Most of the glue where we want it, we just have to be careful that we don't. This is a contact adhesive, so once we've pressed that down, we don't have the chance to recover if we make any mistakes. You can buy these bits of plastic new from Germany, and that would really be the way to go, because usually when you take them out, they are cracked. The clips don't work as well as they should. But as they say, you can only work with what you've got. You could also Potentially use super glue. Might have been a better option along here. Just a little bit twisted, that plastic. The idea is that this now pulls over and is also tacked there with a staple gun. Whether our staple gun will be strong enough to go through there is, of course, a completely different question. Soon find out. Okay, we're gonna pull this around and then staple it on with our staple gun. Now, ideally, this vinyl should be glued to the top of that plastic as well as stapled. Now, the hardest bit of this whole job is going to be making sure that we don't end up with creases and folds in here. You can see how much shorter this is, so to get it down we've got to really stretch this down so that these holes all match up. And we've got to do that without tearing the vinyl and do it in such a way that we don't leave creases anywhere. So what I'm proposing to do is stretch it down in the middle first, and then possibly stretch it down at the corners and then start stapling it in. You can see there's quite a lot of stretching that's going to be necessary, but the danger is if you do one corner first, you're going to get that big crease in there. So I'm sure the professionals out there will have their own methods of doing it, but having never done this before, I've just got to figure it out myself the best way I can. The thing that's worth mentioning is in the factory, this piece will have been glued down with a random spray pattern, but we're not really able to do that because it's not easy to get a glue brush underneath there. So, and there's enough things actually tacking this to the hardboard to keep that flat, I think. So I'm not going to put any glue on the underside of here. First thing I'm doing is I'm stretching this down and lining up these holes here because these holes are fixed. And this is where the bottom pocket is going to go in. So we're going to do that first. Now we're coming down to this corner here, and what I'm going to do is use a hairdryer just to warm this up so I can pull this vinyl this way and stretch out all those creases. Because this is actually already slightly torn and ripped here, and it's all quite brittle, so we've got to be really careful when we're stretching that we don't overstretch and end up tearing it. Quite pleased the way that's come out. There's no obvious creases in there. This here will all be covered up by the piece of chrome trim that goes on there. This will be covered up by the pocket that goes in there. All these holes line up. We'll just get rid of that with a little bristle brush and a Dremel tool. That was not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. We just have to tidy this here up. Basically, this clip will hold all of those loose bits in. And just got to remember you get them the right way around. There's one clip is flat on the top with no clips, and on this side it has plastic clips which clip into little grooves here. So sometimes you may need to get a little bit of washing up liquid or something like that on there to help that slide in easily. Each door has a metal clip here. That's the part number there, 00298884578. And the way to get those in, you squeeze them together with pliers, and then they'll go in that way, and then you'll spin them around that way. These clips, if you want to bend them back, you could just use a pair of needle nose pliers to do that. It doesn't really make much difference in this particular case because we've glued that in there as well, so it's not going anywhere. This is what we started out with on our parts car, a dirty, worn out vinyl door card. And this is how that's come out after cleaning and putting on a new hardboard back on there. If you turn that door card over, I don't know how well you'll see this, but that door card is completely wavy. Where it's got damp, it's all rotten where there's bits of wood come out. And what we've done is we've replaced that with a new door card, stapled it in. We'll put new clips in and proper moisture trap on the door, moisture barrier on the door, and that will not quite be as good as new. It's not quite perfect, but you know what? It's an awful lot better than it was, and I reckon that will do us for another 50 years or so. We've still got some work to do. We've still got to tidy up these pieces here. Haven't made any attempt at cleaning them yet, but that's not a big job. What we may do a video on is how to make up the metal clips that should be along there that allow you to clip this into the hardboard of the door. Those clips invariably rust away, and unfortunately they're not available anymore. We had thought we'd found some in Latvia, but they never turned up after a month of waiting, so I think we'll just attempt to make up our own. And then we're going to delay putting the door card on the car for the simple reason that we will need to adjust the tilt of the windows and to make sure they fit exactly square against a hard top and a soft top roof. And in order to do that, you need to take the door card off. So we'll be doing a separate video on how to adjust the windows. So rather than clipping everything in and then having to unclip it all again, I think I'll adjust the windows first and just put the door cards on at the end. I'm just going to finish this video showing you where to get these staples from and the stapler that you'll need, the metal clips here, and also the clips along the bottom, and just telling you what glues etc. we used. I'm not sure whether they're the right ones or not, but they certainly seem to have worked all right for us. We got the lower door trim clips from these guys here on eBay, ADL Components Limited, £11.99. That's easily enough to do both doors, and we'll give you a few left over. The metal door clips came from Mercedes, and as is so often the case, a lot of these parts are actually cheaper if you get them from Mercedes, £1.30 plus VAT each. We did actually make up our own hardboard door backing, but I also wanted to buy one to see how good we'd done. £45 plus VAT from the SL shop. We also got a couple of damp-proof membranes from them on the same order. Once again, you can get these from Mercedes, and actually slightly cheaper, I do believe, but these are the polythene that goes on the metal door before you mount the door card. We originally got these Tackwise staples from Amazon, 53/4mm, just £3.31. And the stapler we used came from Toolstation, just £11.99. We used the original Gorilla Glue to glue the hardboard to the actual metal strip at the top, just £8.74 from Screwfix. The trim fix, which we'll be using to trim the whole car, the carpets etc., came from these guys here. It's obviously cheaper if you buy it in larger quantities. That's for 6 cans of the stuff.